Okay, so in this tutorial, I figured I'd share something with you guys that I think is pretty useful, and it's using thumbnail sketches. Now, what is a thumbnail sketch pretty much? It's pretty much just a small, should I start on this side? It's pretty much just a small study or a sketch of some subject you're going to draw, or you're planning on doing or drawing of, and you're just making a small sketch of that subject that you're going to be drawing. Now, why do you do it? It's pretty useful because it gives you a way of exploring the subject or different aspects of the subject before you actually do it. Now, in preparing to do a drawing, there are different aspects that you may be concerned with. For one, let's even look at this example. You're going to do a horse portrait, right? So you have to decide for yourself, okay, am I going to do a drawing that is horizontal or like a landscape format, or is it going to have a, say, a portrait format, which is considered a portrait format, where it's higher or, you know, longer than it is wide, and here is wider than it is long or tall, right? So doing thumbnail sketches are small little sketches you do, and you generally box them in like this. You don't have to, but it's useful to do that because it gives you a sense of composition. Let's say, for example, we're going to do a horse, a drawing of a horse's portrait, like a horse's head and neck, right? So with this, you can explore different aspects of the drawing before you actually do it. So, for example, one aspect could be positive and negative space, okay? So, for example, let's say a horse's head is like this. See, and here you're not going into any detail, see? Just like that. So you're considering, okay, the negative shape. And this is something that many artists will do tens of them before they actually do a final drawing, because this gives you a general feel of the drawing before you actually, you know, start it. And see, this gives you a sense of, do you feel like the positive shape interacts with the negative shape, or, you know, what part of the subject are you going to show? And for example, some people like when there's a lot of interesting negative shapes in their drawing. So for example, they may have something like this, and you may consider, okay, including more of the head. So say, for example, maybe something like this. See, and notice all I'm focusing on is just negative and positive shape. I'm not thinking too much about, you know, the actual details and whatnot. I'm just focusing on how does is it interesting, the negative shape that is formed. You see that? And that's just one aspect of, you know, a drawing that you can explore just as a positive negative shape. You can actually also explore, and generally when I'm doing a lot of thumbnail sketches, I'll pretty much have like a whole page full of these things. And I'm just going to do that as an example for you so you can see how, you know, it's a typical way you could go about it. Because in a drawing, just like I was discussing in the tutorial about the 5 stages of a drawing. You have the gesture. You know, you can have a set of thumbnail sketches or one thumbnail sketch where you're just exploring the gesture, you know, just the feel of it. How do you want the drawing to feel on the page? This is the space that will contain your drawing, and how do you want the drawing to interact within that space? And you can explore that in different ways. So this could be exploring the gesture. You know, this could just be, one could be dedicated to exploring a gesture. Another could be exploring the positive and negative space or negative shapes. See, another could be dedicated to exploring composition. See, that's also generally a very important thing, or a couple of them could be dedicated to exploring composition. So for example, even if you're not necessarily, so you're doing one that's focused just on a portrait of a horse, you could be doing a landscape. You could be, say for example, you're going to do something where you have a little, you know, a little tree here. Okay, this gives you a sense of like, how do you want the subject to interact with other elements in the image? Would you want this to be big and this small, or would you want this one to be big, you know, and this small? See, that's what thumbnail sketching does. It gives you a way to play around with the subject before you actually get really serious. And this is very effective when you're exploring composition ideas and so on and so forth. You could actually change the perspective of this whole thing. You could do it so that it's an aerial view. What if you're like high and you're looking down on something like this? You know, And this is what thumbnail sketching does. It's really just a pretty effective way of exploring different aspects of a drawing. So like going back to this example, you're exploring the positive, negative space, you're exploring the positive, negative space, you're exploring the gesture here. You could also explore proportion. So for example, you know, how are you going to interact the different sizes of things, okay? Or you're going to have how much of the body you're going to expose. So for example, if you're drawing a horse, you could say, okay, this is the space that my drawing is going to be in. Now, am I going to have the horse's head on this side like that? And then I have the body like this. You see what I mean? And then you have this negative space because that may make it interesting. Are you going to cut it off right here? You know, so only a part of the body is showing, or you may actually want to do it so that the entire body is showing, or you may want to put this on this side. So you may actually shift this over to over here, like this. But now you may have this. See, so this one is exploring just the head and you're putting it to the left. This one is showing the same thing, but now it's almost like you moved it, the view, or imagine this as your viewfinder, you move it to the left. So see, now you're showing the body of the horse. Another important thing that's good for, thumbnail sketches are good for, is exploring values. Because you can have, for example, a drawing that will, say for example, have a horse's head like this. And see what this does, it frees you up to have a lot more creative control over your drawing. You're not just a slave to the image that you're seeing, okay? You have to learn how to, you know, compose, just like a composer composes music. As an artist, you have to also compose your music, you know, your composition. You determine how you want it to be. Will you have the background be pitch black? See, this is exploring a value pattern, see? Are you going to have a black horse, a white horse? You know, is it going to be gray? Is it going to be black and white? Is it going to be a pitch black background like this? Or you could have another background that may be, you know, gray. So see, you're not focusing on any details and stuff like that here. You're just focusing on getting basic shapes, basic value relationships. So like with this, you may say, okay, what if, you know, this one, it will be really dark. This one, it may be really gray. This one, you may say, okay, I'm going to have the light source come from the upper right. This one, I'm going to have the light source come from the upper left. See, this is what you do with thumbnail sketches. You know, you have, if the light source is coming from the upper right, then you know that the shadow areas are going to be on the lower right, right? And see, and this is the type of stuff you do with value sketches. And see, this gives you a nice sense of, okay, how am I going to lay in the values? Where the darkest area is going to be? And you can get a sense of that. You're mapping things out before you actually begin. With this one, it may be a little bit different. Over here, you're going to have the shadows on this side. So shadows is going to be on the lower right. See that? And then you can play around with, you know, what details am I going to include in this drawing? And this is how you resolve composition questions, value questions, you know, proportion questions, and even the value forms. How will you have the different aspects of value and form interact? You know, you can explore even issues that you think you're going to have. You can start resolving them early and get a good sense of that. You may even want to do additional sketches of just details. See, that's another thing that makes this pretty useful. You may say, for example, you may want to just do a zoom in study of just the mouth of the horse, you know, whatever. You know, if you look at a lot of drawings by people like, you know, Michelangelo, and a lot of people who, you know, especially people who do a lot of figurative art, you see they sometimes will do studies of just if they're drawing a person's face, they may do a study of just their nose. They may do a study of someone's finger and so on. You know, they just have little details of the overall subject that they may study. And this in itself can help you, especially if you're doing large-scale drawings. This can be useful in terms of giving you an idea of how will you deal with that detail when you get there. And you can even use it as a model. So for example, you can save this study for when you're doing other drawings, or you may just save it as a way of, reference. You can use it for future drawings, even with drawing something else. So you may think of this and say, okay, this is a good idea. Or you may use it as a source of inspiration for something else you'll be doing. And these are what, thumbnail sketches are pretty much useful to do. And I'm sure you can find many other ways of incorporating them as well. But it's something that I think every artist or every art student should learn to do as early as possible. And even with here, again, see, I've done similar poses. You can explore different ideas. You could actually do a drawing of a horse that's just grazing. See, that's another idea. And you can play around with that. How would that look? That's the head, the ear. And I'm just doing this from my imagination right now. See, so I'm not concerned with having it look like a horse actually looks. I could think of grass like here and stuff like that. And that's what you do. And you will see how this will allow you to see things in different ways and just play with ideas. Some of these you may never use them again, but just the exercise is healthy for you.